Good morning, everyone. Today I'm going to present to you on understanding the gray area of fair use. I'm going to start off with a definition from Title 17, Section 107, and it is fair use of a copyrighted work, including such use by reproduction in copies or phono records, or by any other means specified by that section, for purposes such as criticism, comment, news reporting, teaching, including making multiple copies for classroom use, scholarship, research, is not an infringement of copyright. The definition of educational fair use involves giving the right to copy, distribute, exhibit, and alter the work for educational purposes. There are also two other common areas of fair use, and they are journalistic and parody. These involve commenting on and altering the original work, so this is kind of for news, like newscasting, newspaper. But we as educators are mostly going to deal with the educational fair use. There are four main factors to consider, and that is, the first is the purpose and character of the use, the nature of the work, the amount and substantiality of the work being used, and the potential market effect. Now, some consider a fifth factor, and that's good faith. Consideration is given if efforts were made to obtain permission and if proposed uses are deemed honorable. If cases are made against a use, the fifth factor may be considered, but this one is kind of hard to judge. And so maybe an email attempt to get in contact with an original producer of a work, or maybe emailing their agency or whatever, just showing some effort that you tried to get permission. Now we're going to elaborate a little more on the four factors that should be considered. The first was purpose and character of the use. This refers to the setting of how the work will be used. Nonprofit and educational settings are more likely to be considered fair use, unlike entertainment and profit. An example of entertainment that would not be considered fair use is adding like the iTunes top hit to a yearbook video that your students are going to sell for a fundraiser. The only way this could be fair use is if you obtained permission by the artist. Journalistic and parody uses are usually considered transformative use, and a lot of times this is because they are editing the work or changing the work in some way. And then the second was the nature of the copyrighted work, and this refers to the creativity of the work, factual and published versus fictional and unpublished. It is easier to classify factual work as fair use. Music and fictional work are seen as entertainment, and it's harder to explain them as being fair. Amount and substantiality refers to how much of the work is used and exactly what is used. Small and insignificant parts versus large and core parts are the main idea of an idea or work. The greater the percentage used, the less likely it will be considered fair use. Usage of the heart and core also may be detrimental to the original work, and this is when we're talking about the financial impact, which is in the next factor. The potential market effect, and this refers to the financial impact of the original work. License available and publicly accessible versus license not available and limited access. If the copyright holder loses money, the use will most likely be considered not fair use. An example of this would be showing a movie in a classroom that maybe like The Lion King or something that's not really a lesson, it's just kind of maybe you wanted a free day, that would probably be not considered fair use. This factor is also considered the most important by the Supreme Court. Now I'm going to talk about the multimedia guidelines, and these guidelines can help us as educators help our students understand what fair use is and what is not. And we need to be sure as educators that we always model fair use guidelines. Motion media, up to 10% or 3 minutes, whichever is less, may be used in a multimedia project. So this would be like video clips, and mostly what I think of is inserting like a video clip into your presentation. The next is music lyrics and music videos, and up to 10%, but no more than 30 seconds from an individual music work may be reproduced and incorporated in a multimedia project. So the 10% rule goes as long as it's not going beyond 30 seconds. Otherwise, you need to stick to under 30 seconds of that particular song or video. The next is illustrations and photographs. Photos and illustrations may be used in their entirety because you can't really use half a picture, but no more than 5 illustrations or photos from a single artist or photographer may be reproduced or used in an educational project. There's also another rule, like if an artist has 15 pieces in one work and it's 15 different photos, you can only use 10% of that. You cannot use all 5 photos, or you can only use 10% of the entire work if it's sequential. And the next is text, which is very important to us as educators because we know that if it's not financially easy for us to get 25 books for everybody in our class, we think that it would be okay just to copy a chapter and hand it out to everybody. And well, that's really not okay. You are only allowed to use 10% of the book, or 1,000 words. And this is towards an educational multimedia project, but there are other guidelines for educators to follow when it comes to like making copies of chapters or so on. You just can't make a copy of every chapter for every student. And then finally, on this multimedia, credit always must be given if a copyrighted material is used. And even if it's just one picture and you think it's no big deal, you should always give credit to that artist or photographer or creator of that image. And then next is permission. Getting permission from the original creator of a work is the safest route when using copyrighted materials. If it will be impossible to obtain permission to use a copyrighted material, say it's from 100 years ago, then it would be best not to use the material unless you are absolutely confident that it would fall under the fair use doctrine. And the copyright.gov website really suggests that if you have any doubt, that you should probably seek an attorney just to be on the safe side. Permission to utilize a work whose copyright is owned by someone else is typically established through a license agreement. And this is what you see like when you download a new software and it says you must agree to the terms and agreements, and then you have to either read all of that or decline it. Licensing agreements may or may not include financial compensation. And for educators, sometimes it's easier if maybe the district buys to that, and then they can give so many people permission to access that information. That would kind of be an example, but not really, because we still can't just go and print everything and copy everything from that, even though we've bought it. one time. That would just again be like the movies. You can't really just say, oh, I bought the movie. Yeah, but well, now your 25 other students are not going to buy the movie because they watched it at school. You just kind of have to use your judgment on what's right and what's not, because it's not, fair use is not something that's very clear. Permission terms may also be established by a copyright owner on a per use basis. So if you are familiar with maybe the author of a book and they say you can make copies of chapters for your students, then that's okay, but you should probably have that on documentation with signatures, so that if it comes back on you ever, you have that to back you up. The downside to trying to acquire permission is the time and effort it may take to get in contact with the copyrighted material's owner, especially if, once again, it's impractical to get in touch with the owner or the agency, whoever has ownership of the material. And then my last topic is open access. And open access someday will be an educator's best friend. Open access is a no-cost, no-wait concept of access to scholarly works. Open access articles have limited copyright and licensing restrictions. Open access publishing should make the copying of educational materials easier for educators. So once again, this is like being able to print a chapter of a book off for all of your students. Open access right now is only online, so there aren't any open access actual books or anything right now, but that's the goal that open access initiatives are going towards. And then I'm putting it all together. Well, that may be impossible at this point due to the fact that there are no specific amount of words, lines, or notes that may safely be taken without permission, because there is no one person, no doctrine, or court that can tell you exactly what falls under fair use and what does not. Your handout I gave you has a little bit of information that covers all of what was covered in the presentation, and it also has the website for the copyright.gov, and that has some guidelines to help you. But once again, they cannot tell you exactly what would be fair use and what would not. It's just impossible at this point. Thank you.